If you want to travel full-time in your van and enjoy most of the modern amenities like light, refrigerated food, and charged electronics, then you'll really want to spend some time thinking about the electrical system for your van. I'd also recommend planning out your electrical system fairly early on in your design process for a few reasons. One, this can be a complicated thing to design and may take some time. Two, you'll probably want to run the wiring in the walls, so you should probably think about how this will fit into the design of your walls early on. Also, some of the wires, like those going through the roof to solar panels, are going to be easiest to run before the interior ceiling is built out. And finally, the battery and charge controllers and all the other related components end up taking up a sizable amount of space, so you need to know where you're going to place this in your layout. This will also be the location where most of that wiring is going to run to and from. Okay, so I'm Sam Moser, and this is the 9th video in my van build series. This one will be about planning the electrical system for a camper van. So first off, what is an electrical system for a camper van going to look like? Well, you're going to need a battery at the heart of the system. Next, you'll need some charge sources, at least one, but preferably a couple different ways to charge the battery. Finally, there's going to be all the circuits and loads to deliver power to wherever it's needed. This video is going to focus on the charging sources. There'll be more videos to follow on the other aspects of the electrical system design. For a quick fact about me that I don't think I've shared on this channel before, in college I studied and got my degree in electrical and computer engineering. After college, I actually worked for a few years as an electrical engineer in an automotive-related position, but not doing anything close to camper and van builds. Regardless, this is a topic I understand pretty well. A typical RV will usually have a shore power hookup and a gas generator for when you're not near an electrical hookup. Aside from the generator, which is loud and burns a lot of fuel, they aren't really set up for off-grid camping or boondocking. I didn't want my van to be reliant on an electrical hookup or generator. My goal was to be able to camp in free and more remote spots and to not have to worry about power. Given this, I wanted solar power to be my main charge source. Once you have your panels and system set up, solar is free and clean energy. I installed 300 watts worth of solar panels. I used 3 100-watt panels. I only went with 3 separate panels as I already had 2 of the panels on hand that a friend had given me. If I was buying them all new, I probably would have either gone with a single 300-watt panel or something like 2 160-watt panels. That would have just simplified the mounting a little bit and used the roof space a little bit more efficiently. My 300 watts of solar is paired with a 12-volt 200 amp hour AGM battery. I felt like this ratio of solar array input power to battery capacity was just right, especially since the panels are mounted flat. On most days, with a decent amount of sun, we were able to bring our battery back up to a full charge, and usually on sunny days have extra power coming in to charge more gadgets while the sun is out, instead of draining the battery later. With a 200 amp hour battery, I definitely wouldn't recommend going with less than 200 watts of solar panels if you want that to be your primary charge source. Another thing to consider with solar is how the panels are mounted in regards to the angle of the sun. A solar panel is most efficient when the panel is angled so that it's perpendicular to the sun's rays. But on a van, it's easiest to mount them flat. Flat is great during the middle of the day in the summer when the sun is high in the sky. But for the majority of the time, this isn't the optimal angle. When it isn't the middle of the day and in the other seasons other than summer, when the angle of the sun's a lot lower, your panels will still work and they'll still collect power, just not as efficiently. So just keep in mind that much of the time they'll not be bringing in as high of a wattage of power as they're rated for. Some people will create a mounting system for panels to pivot at one end and angle them up. This seems like a neat idea, especially if you plan to be in one spot for a while, but I didn't think it would be worth the benefit in my case. Now let's talk about charge controllers. So you can't just hook up solar panels directly to a battery. The energy produced by them needs to be regulated before being used to charge a battery, and this is what the solar charge controller does. You'll see 2 main types of these being sold, PWM and MPPT. PWM charge controllers are pretty simple, while MPPT charge controllers are more sophisticated and more efficient at getting as much power out of the panels as possible. The only downside to MPPT controllers is that they're more expensive. As long as it's in the budget, I definitely recommend using an MPPT charge controller. In my build, I use the Victron Energy Smart Solar MPPT 130. I've been extremely pleased with this charge controller. I really like that you can also connect the controller over Bluetooth through a phone app and monitor the current charge conditions, as well as save data showing how much power the setup is able to harvest day to day. If you want to hear more about the differences between MPPT and PWM charge controllers, keep watching. Otherwise, if you want to skip ahead to the next section, which will be about charging your battery from your van's alternator, I'll put links in the video description below to skip to different sections of the video. Before I talk more about the differences between these two, let's go over the two ways that multiple solar panels can be hooked up. When you have more than one solar panel, they can either be hooked up in parallel or in series. When hooked up in parallel, the positive lead of each panel is joined together and the negative lead of each panel is joined. The combined output has the same voltage as an individual panel, but the output current is the sum of each panel's current. When hooked up in series, the positive output from the first panel is hooked up to the negative output of the second panel, and so on for each additional panel. In a series setup, the output voltage is the sum of each panel's voltage, but the current stays the same. With a PWM charge controller, the voltage of the solar panels needs to correspond with the voltage of the battery, with the voltage from the solar power being just above the charge voltage of the battery. You'll see solar panels referred to as 12-volt panels, and these are meant to work with 12-volt batteries. But note that the actual operating voltage is around 18 volts. PWM stands for pulse width modulation. The reason the panel and the battery voltages need to match up is because PWM charge controllers essentially just act as a switch that turns on and off rapidly. The ratio of the time the switch is on versus off is controlled to adjust the voltage going to the battery, depending on where it is in its charge cycle. If you were to use multiple panels with a PWM charge controller, the panels need to be hooked up in parallel so that the voltage doesn't increase. There are advantages, though, to being able to wire panels in series. So now let's talk about MPPT charge controllers. MPPT stands for Maximum Power Point Tracking. In general, MPPT charge controllers are at least 10 to 15% more efficient than PWM. With an MPPT charge controller, the solar array and battery voltages don't need to correspond, and actually to get the best performance out of an MPPT controller, you want the array voltage to be substantially higher than the battery voltage. MPPT charge controllers work by adjusting the input voltage to the point where the maximum power output from the array can be achieved. The controller is constantly adjusting this as the maximum power point is going to vary throughout the day as the intensity and angle of the sun changes, as well as the temperature of the panels change. Since you want the voltage to be higher, with multiple panels you'll hook them up in series. This means you'll have higher voltage but lower current compared to a parallel connection. Lower current means you can use smaller gauge wire, which will be cheaper and have less power losses in the cables. On a small system, the differences may be small, but as the size of the system increases, it makes more of a difference. The other benefit here is that when the weather isn't totally sunny and it's a little more on the overcast side, you'll be able to harvest a little more power out of an array with a series connection and MPPT. With a parallel connection, the array voltage might not reach above the charge voltage of the battery. Although the charge current is still going to be low in these kind of conditions, in times of overcast weather, getting a little bit of charge is still better than none. And the last benefit of MPPT charge controllers is that they work over a larger temperature range, as PWM charge controllers perform worse in cold temperatures. With any charge controller you pick though, just be sure that the input and output specs match up with the solar array and battery setup you choose. So solar is great for sunny days, but it's not always sunny, so it's always good to have a backup way to keep your battery charged. In a van, charging while you drive and using power from the alternator is a good option, and what I chose for my secondary charge source. Real quick, for anyone who doesn't know what an alternator is, it's essentially a little generator coupled to your engine that takes the rotational energy from the engine and turns it into electrical energy. This electrical energy is then used to charge the vehicle's starter battery. An alternator only generates power while the engine is running, and it can also be used to power other things, or in this case, charge your van's house battery. You do want to be mindful of the capacity of the alternator in your van and the max current you draw from it. You want to avoid putting too high of a load on your alternator and making it overheat and burn out prematurely. In the Ford Transit, the stock alternator is 150 amps, but there's also an option for a 250 amp alternator. If you want to use the alternator for a lot more than just what the vehicle manufacturer intended, then of course the bigger alternator would be a lot better. My van only has the 150 amp alternator, so I use a battery-to-battery charger that will only draw up to 30 amps from it, and I gave this charger a dedicated cutoff switch so I can turn it off whenever we don't need it. I'll talk more about this kind of charger in just a second. There are a couple different ways you can charge your house battery from the alternator. First off though, don't directly wire your house battery to your starter battery. These are different batteries that are used differently and need to be maintained differently, so you should always have at least some sort of isolation between them. The most important reason for this is because you don't want to end up stranding yourself at a remote campsite with a dead battery. So with that in mind, the two ways to charge your house battery from the alternator is with an isolator or with a battery-to-battery charger. Let's talk about isolators. The function of an isolator is pretty simple. It'll provide current to all batteries while charging, but it'll separate or isolate the batteries during discharge. Some isolators are pretty simple in design, and others are a little smarter and they'll monitor voltages and change behavior accordingly. The issue with isolators, though, is they do nothing to regulate the charge profile for the house battery. Since the alternator is designed to charge the starter battery, it can also be used to charge other batteries. But two lead-acid batteries in different conditions aren't meant to be charged together in the same manner, so you won't be getting an ideal charge. Batteries will last longest if they're charged with a proper charge profile. For lead-acid batteries, there are three main parts to the charge profile: a bulk charge stage, an absorption charge stage, and a float stage. The alternator will likely provide a fine bulk charge, but not the final two stages. Lithium batteries are particularly picky about how they are charged, so if you're using lithium batteries, be sure to avoid an isolator that isn't specifically intended to be used with lithium batteries. If you want to go beyond an isolator and charge your house battery from the alternator, but with an ideal charge profile, then you need a battery-to-battery charger. These will take the power from the alternator and regulate the voltage and current output it provides before giving that to the house battery. Usually these can be programmed to work with different battery chemistries, and they will have other features built in to monitor voltages and prevent discharge of the starter battery. They are pricier than an isolator, but they will help to prolong the life of your house battery. In my build, I used the 30 amp battery-to-battery charger from Sterling. If you want a faster charge or for bigger batteries, they have a model that provides higher output current, but make sure your alternator is hefty enough to support that. Okay, so that should be enough on alternators. I did add one more charge source in my van, and that's a normal 120 volt AC charger that I can use by running an extension cord to a normal outlet. This would also be referred to as shore power. We hardly used this while on the road though, generally because we tried to stay at free campsites, which means no hookups, but even when we were at campgrounds, we usually didn't need the electrical hookup, as most of the time we could keep our battery maintained just via solar. But you do have to be picky about where you park during the day. Having a shore power charger is also handy for keeping the battery charged and maintained when the van is not in use. I didn't worry about putting in a very fast charger for this, so I just added a fairly basic 10 amp multi-stage charger from Noco. I'll put links in the description to all the products I've mentioned. I also added a switch so I can use this charger to charge either the house battery or the starter battery of the van, and I find this extremely handy. I added an aftermarket alarm system to my van, and I didn't realize how much of an extra load that was going to put on my van's battery. If it sits for a week without being driven, the starter battery will usually be fairly drained. So now I can use this charger to keep the battery topped off if it's going to sit for more than a few days. The other bonus of this is that if my starter battery were to die when we were far from civilization, I can plug the AC charger into my inverter and charge my starter battery from the house battery, which can then be charged from solar. So I think that works out as a pretty good safety feature. Alright, so I think I'll wrap up this video here, and in the next video we'll get into batteries. My goal is to start releasing videos on a more consistent basis, and what I'm planning now is to start releasing a video every Monday. In order to make this feasible though, I might start breaking topics up over a few videos. I'll still cover things in the same depth though. As always, thanks for watching. If you're new to my channel, hit the subscribe button. Last week I hit 10,000 subscribers, and that was a really exciting moment for me, and I hope to keep growing my channel. See you later. Bye.